Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening to tonight's live stream episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. Tonight's guest unfortunately had a very traumatic encounter just 2 days ago in an interesting place. I really feel for the guy. I spoke with him yesterday for the first time about what happened to him, and he was all torn up, understandably so. But yeah, you're going to get the rest of the story here in just a bit, in about 10 minutes. And when you listen to what this poor man went through, you're really going to feel for him. But before we get to that point, let's bring him on here now. Tonight's guest is Mike. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vic. I really do appreciate you giving me the opportunity to explain this however I can.
Oh, you're welcome. That's what I'm here for. And yeah, that's what I love to do. I'm just so glad that you found out about me and what I do. And speaking of that, you found out about me in a very interesting way. How did you find out about me?
Yeah, yes, I did, sir. Well, when I had the encounter, when I finally got back down to Kent, Connecticut from the area surrounding Salisbury, Connecticut, I told my old mom and my old dad and my older sister, and no one really believed me at first. But when they saw that my jeans were soaked in my own urine, they realized something really bad happened. And my mom was really, as most mothers are, she was the one that really was the most responsive and the most concerned. And the more I mean, at this point, you got to understand, Vic, at this point, I am almost ranting and raving like a lunatic. I'm just talking and talking and talking, and you can't shut me up, and no one can get a word in. And I mean, I'm literally just repeating myself over and over and over again is basically the way I would say it. And so finally, when I was calmed down a bit, and they convinced me to change out of my wet pants. Not calm at all yet, but a little bit more comfortable in some clean clothes. And basically, my dad said it first. My dad said, "Well, you should call the Rangers and let them know that you had a large predator encounter." And I'm like, "Okay, I think you're that is sound advice. Let me go and do that." And so I go online and I'm looking up park rangers for Bear Mountain, Connecticut. Nothing pops up. I look in park rangers near Salisbury, Connecticut. Nothing pops up. So my dad's like, "Okay, fine. Just call Parks and Rec." That's just how my dad is. He's like, "Just call Parks and Rec and be done with it." So I did. I called Parks and Rec and I asked them. I got somebody on the phone and I asked them, what ranger do I talk to for the Bear Mountain area of northwestern Connecticut up in the mountains? And they directed me to the ranger's station's phone number. And apparently, it's not just a ranger station. It's also like they have biologists there and wildlife experts. So I call this number, and initially I got voicemail. I did not want to leave a voicemail because I knew they would think it was a prank. So I tried back about 10 minutes later. I actually got somebody on the phone, a live human being. And it was a female park ranger. And I told her that I would like to explain a large predator encounter. And so she asked me to go ahead. And I basically, now, yesterday, I was on the phone with you for 2.5 hours. And I think maybe about an hour to an hour and a half of it was my story. And the rest of it was you explaining to me all the great, wonderful, beautiful things that you had to say to calm me down. But I gave her an abridged version because I didn't want to sound crazy, right? I did not want to sound crazy. Towards the end of the conversation, she says, well, what do you think you saw? And this is where I got nervous. I almost hung up the phone. Really, I almost hung up the phone because how am I going to describe this thing? So, I'm nervous and I'm jittery, and I'm like, well, if I tell you what I think I saw, you're going to think this is a prank, and then you're going to hang up on me. And she's like, no, sir, I'm not going to hang up on you. I'm not going to think it's a prank. Just tell me what you think you saw. And so, very hesitantly, I said, I think I saw a werewolf. She didn't laugh. She didn't hang up. It was kind of radio silence for a hot second. And then she said, okay. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, so you've heard about this before? You've seen this before? And she's like, I've personally never seen this before, but I have ranger friends all across the country that I talk to on a weekly to monthly basis, and I've heard many stories about things like this. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, so this is not just Connecticut. It's, you know people that have heard of these things. And she was like, yes, sir, I have. And then, to make a long story short, because I was on the phone with her for about 45 minutes. To make a long story short, she said, well, the only thing I can tell you, she's documenting this. I can hear her clacking the keyboard, writing this stuff down via keyboard. I can literally hear her clacking her fingers, documenting. And she even told me, she's like, sir, I'm documenting everything you're describing. I'm going to forward this to dispatch, and dispatch will then find the proper authorities to go out and take a look at the area you were. She knew exactly where I was. So I was like, wow, okay. She's not just listening to me, she's literally taking notes. And that's when she told me, what I would suggest for you to do is to go online and look up dogmanencounters.com. She didn't give me your name. She didn't give me any information other than that. That was it. That was the only information. She said, just go online, look up dogmanencounters.com, and once you get there, you can submit a form where someone will eventually get in contact with you and ask you more questions. Now, Dogman, what's a Dogman? I've never even heard of this term. I know Sasquatch. I watch these TV shows on History Channel and Travel Channel, and they're all very exciting. I'm into cryptids. As far as, as an atheist, I'm very science-minded. I believe in facts and proof and truth, but I also believe in. I love hearing about extinct animals, and like I told you earlier, when I was in high school, I did an essay. I did a 5,000 word essay on the coelacanth, which has been extinct for millions of years. But then, 30, 40 years ago, a live one is caught. Not it. They caught it live, and this thing is apparently supposed to be extinct for millions of years, but they found a live one. So, watching the shows about Dr. Jeff Meldrum and Sasquatch and how he thinks it could be Gigantopithecus blackie, and it's an ancestor of that. And so I'm like, okay, so if there's an extinct creature that does exist called the coelacanth, why couldn't there be an offshoot of Gigantopithecus? Why couldn't there be? So I was into cryptids in that way, but werewolves, absolutely not. If you believe in werewolves, then you believe in vampires. If you believe in vampires, then you believe in mummies. If you believe in mummies, then you believe in zombies. So those that's kind of where I wouldn't cross the line. And it was the ranger that got me in touch with you, and you were very quick in your response, and I was astounded at how professional and polite you were. And I, even looking back on it on yesterday, it's almost like it was a dream, to be quite like it didn't happen.
Well, there's a reason behind why I contacted you so quickly. I saw in the report that your encounter had only happened 2 days prior. I'm sorry, no, it had happened the day prior to when you contacted me, number one. So that means you're really going to be stressed out about that experience. I mean, it's as fresh in your mind as can be. And then also, when I read the nature of what actually happened when you had that encounter, unfortunately, I thought, yeah, I definitely need to step him up in priority over some other people. So, yeah, that's why I contacted you so quickly. But I'm wondering, Mike,
I'm glad you did.
I'm glad you let me know about your experience. I'm wondering, though, Mike, what did you think when you found out that Dogman encounters were so common that there's actually a guy who helps eyewitnesses deal with their encounters full time?
Well, honestly, I didn't know what to think, to be quite honest, Vic. Again, my mother. Now, mind you, let me just briefly say, I was born and raised in Danbury, Connecticut, which is southwestern Connecticut, but I currently reside in the Shenandoah Mountains of Virginia. That's where I live with my wife and my kids and my grandkids. And just to give you a really quick geographical situation of where this happened. So in Danbury, Connecticut, which is southwestern Connecticut, that is the beginning of what we call the Berkshire Hills. And if you go north on a beeline, the hills get bigger and bigger and bigger until you hit central western Connecticut, which would be where my parents currently reside, which is where I am currently right now in my car talking to you. The hills around here are roughly in the thousand feet above sea level, which constitutes a hill, not a mountain. But then when you get a little bit further north into northwestern Connecticut, that's when the elevation rises above 2,000 feet, which, if I'm not mistaken, worldwide, topographists and geologists will tell you anything over 2,000 feet is considered a mountain. So it's not until you hit northwestern Connecticut that it's considered the mountains. But all of this area is considered the Berkshire Hills. Once you hit Massachusetts, again, a beeline straight north, that's called the Berkshire Mountains. And then from Massachusetts, once you hit Vermont, that's when the Appalachians turn into the Green Mountains. And that's when you start hitting 4,000, 5,000 feet above sea level. So basically, it's a gradual climb from Danbury, Connecticut, where I was born, all the way up into Canada. And it's all just a subdivision of the Appalachian Mountains. Currently, I'm in the Shenandoah Mountains of Virginia, a little bit outside of Roanoke. And to me, as a solo camper, my whole life, I'm not a hunter, but I am an avid solo camper. My whole entire life, yes, I've gone camping with friends and family, and I do like the experience of the camaraderie, but to me, there's absolutely nothing as beautiful, wonderful, or peaceful as just having a solo camp where you only rely on yourself and you just take care of yourself. Again, I'm not a hunter. I don't carry guns. The only true hunting I've ever done is bow hunting. And even then, I'm an amateur. I'm a novice. I'm more of a knife guy. I could do wonders with a knife or a set of knives, right? I got 2 hands, 2 knives. I could do wonders with that. And I'm a professional chef. So that's just hand in hand. But hearing about your show, and then after the incident, and I talked to you, my mother truly 100% believed me at this point. I mean, she was 100% Michael. There's no way. I'm 50 years old. I just turned 50 on February 4th. So literally like 5 days ago, I turned 50. And she's like, you're not going to come to our house and with your pants soiled if something really bad did not happen. I know my son, as most mothers do. They know their sons probably better than their siblings or even their fathers. And so she knew something really horrible happened. And so after I talked to you, we listened to an episode, and my mother was so hooked on how the stories correlated, my story compared to the first story we heard, that she wanted to hear another one. And so we did that. And then after that second one, she begged me. Now at this point, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want no more. But it's my mom. She's 75 years old, and she was like, one last one. And those were the 3 that we heard. And I'm glad she asked me to do that, because those, not so much the first story, but the last 2 stories really resonated, especially the story with Dave, just due to some certain sounds that I heard, which we'll get to in a bit.
I want to put something out there in the listener's ears before I actually ask you to tell us about your encounter. If you could have only heard Mike try to recount that experience that he had to me yesterday. You want to know why Mike's here tonight to share this experience with you? This man is here tonight to share this experience, basically to relive it, because he wants to help that person out there who maybe lives in this area in Connecticut, close to Bear Mountain, who might have an encounter if they didn't know that they're there. And there are other reasons too, but it's all centered around his desire to help people. Now, it doesn't get any more impressive than that. Like I said, if you could only hear the trouble he had working his way through the experience yesterday, and here he is putting the well-being of other people in front of his, and that's why he's here tonight. I mean, you just can't say enough good things about someone like that. I am so impressed, Mike. I really am.
Damn. Thank you, Vic. I appreciate that. That was very sweet.
Oh, you're welcome. You are welcome. And please remember, Mike, you apologized to me yesterday for crying several times. sharing the experience. Don't you dare apologize tonight if you cry again. I mean, you're human. If anyone else went through that experience, they would be wailing as well. So, I mean, yeah, just do the best you can to get through it. If you need more time, we can talk more before I actually ask you to share the experience if you'd like. I don't want you to set in telling us about it until you're good and ready to do that, or I should say, as ready as possible to do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't be any more ready. The longer I wait, the more nervous and scared. I'm actually terrified to even tell you to this story live. And I know that at the end of this, um, I'm going to have people online asking questions, and I'm cool with that. I am, and I hope I do justice by answering their questions to the best of my ability. Truly, I hope I can do that for them. But I mean, I'm not afraid to cry, Vic. Again, I'm 50 years old. I'm married. I got 3 adult kids and 3 grandkids, one from each kid. And I've cried in front of my family many, many times. I'm not afraid to cry. I think men who say they won't cry, I'm not going to judge, but if you got to cry, you got to cry, and I'm okay with it. Hopefully, it doesn't happen, but I don't, I don't know, I don't know exactly what feelings are going to happen as I relive this, as I say it.
Well, there's no way to know. Just please do the best you can with it. If we need to take some breaks, we can take breaks. That's not a problem. Just do the best you can getting through it, and everything's going to fall into place. And like I've told you several times, please remember you're amongst friends here. You have no idea how many people are out there listening right now, supporting you. They're behind you. They want the best for you. So, yeah, please remember the fact that you are amongst friends here. So, having said that, Mike, please tell us about your encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
All right. Well, uh, it was my birthday, February 4th, and it's just tradition in my family because I live so far away that on my birthday, my birthday, I usually, so as a chef, every year I usually get a week's vacation. Um, if I'm there for several years, I get 2 weeks vacation. I usually try to separate those. But so I usually take my week vacation, and if my wife is a travel nurse, she's an RN, and she travels all around the country doing like 3-month, 4-month contracts, and she gets paid a ridiculous amount of money compared to if she just stayed home and was an RN at home. So, not, I mean, when I say we're a ridiculous amount of money, we're not rich. I'm just saying, comparatively to what she would make if she just stayed at one facility, the company she works for pays her better to go out to these other states and do contracts. So currently, she is in Montana, Glasgow, Montana, right now, which, from what she's telling me, is inundated with 5 feet of snow and very, very, very colder than New England could ever be. And trust me, New England is very cold. So this is what my wife is telling me. So she couldn't make it. She has been with me many times during my birthday week. So I come up here from where I live in Virginia, in Shenandoah, in the Shenandoah Mountains. And now I'm actually questioning. Now I'm actually questioning living in the Shenandoah Mountains. To be quite honest, I'll get to that maybe at the end. But that's yeah, that I'm a little terrified about going back home as well. Um, but I'm up here visiting family, and like I said, we're in northwestern Connecticut, which is very forested, very hilly, and as you get further north, very mountainous, and it's the wilderness. I mean, just miles and miles of wilderness. It's along the Appalachian Trail, so the Appalachian Trail runs. It leaves New York State, eastern New York State, goes into western Connecticut, and then just bolts straight up north into Vermont, into Massachusetts, and then from Massachusetts into Vermont. And then from Vermont, it veers and goes into New Hampshire. So, quick description on that. So I'm up here visiting, and it's like every other time I've been up here. And I have a dog. Her name is Midnight. She's 13 years old. She is a Scottish Mastiff. She's big. She's a big dog. Even in her old age, she has not shrunk. She's a big dog. If anybody out there listening knows what a Scottish Mastiff looks like, that's her. And she has dark coloring to her, which is why I called her Midnight. And I've had her since she was a puppy, literally weaned. As soon as she was weaned, I had her, and she's been with me for 13 years. And great dog, very calm, very social dog. Doesn't bark much. Doesn't, like you'll go out to a park and some dogs are just baying. They're just literally like they'll see another dog and just like start baying, going crazy because they see another dog. Midnight is like, yeah, yeah, I know you're baying because I'm Midnight. That's why you're doing it. But she's calm. She doesn't bay back. She literally just minds her business. Very sweet dog. And so I brought her up with me, like I usually always do. I take her with me everywhere unless I'm at work. Obviously, as a chef, can't bring her in the kitchen, although that would be super cool if I could. But so it's me and Midnight, and my birthday was on Sunday the 4th, and now it's Wednesday. And we had plans to when the sun goes down, we had plans to have dinner, have some drinks, get a little loose, have the family get a little crazy kind of thing. My mom's 75, my dad's 80, but they're still spry. They're still spry. And I had my several aunts. I had 2 aunts and 2 uncles, and their kids, which are my cousins, all roughly about the same age as I am. So, there was a group of us, and this is what we do. But I wanted to be alone. Again, I'm a solo camper, and I had no intentions of camping because I wanted to get back and celebrate my birthday week. But I did want to get out. I wanted to get alone, and so I took Midnight in my car, and there's this place called Bear Mountain, Connecticut, and it's in northwestern Connecticut, right before the Massachusetts border, about maybe 1.5 to 2 miles right before you hit the Massachusetts border. And it's the tallest peak in all of Connecticut. It is 2,380 feet above sea level. So technically, it's considered a mountain by 380 feet because topographers, like I said earlier, and geologists, anything over 2,000 is considered a mountain. So it just made it by 380 feet. So it's not, it's not the Rockies, it's not the Andes. It's just it's the highest mountain in Connecticut, and I've been there many times before. As a teenager, I've been there many times. I've partied, literally, like no joke. I've partied on top of the summit with friends. I've been there in my 20s. I've brought ex-girlfriends up there just to see the view, because it's a panoramic view, literally, like no trees at all. There was a major fire on the top of Bear Mountain, I think back in the 60s. And ever since then, I don't know if it's because birds aren't pooping enough with their seeds, but there hasn't been a lot of tree growth since this major fire 30, 40 years ago. And there are trees, but they're very stunted. I mean, I'm taller than any tree on top of this. And what I would like to say is, at the very summit, there's this cairn, right? CAIRN. There's a cairn. And there's a plaque at the bottom of the cairn. And, you know, it says, you've reached Bear Mountain, 2,380 feet, blah, 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 blah. It just gives a little description of the forest fire, and that's pretty much it. But the cairn itself is about 15, 20 feet tall. And it's massive. It's huge. It's not just like, you know, 15, 20 feet tall of this small little tiny thing. Like, you can climb it. You can actually climb it and get onto the top of it. And when you do that, and you're above everything else, if you look north, you could see about 90 miles to the north into Mass. You could see the shadow of the tallest mountain in Massachusetts on that same range, which is called Mount Greylock. You could see the shadow of it. If you look to the east, you could see all the farmlands, all the forest, and all the wilderness for roughly about 90 miles. Almost. You could almost think, you can't, but you could almost think you see the ocean, but you can't. But you're damn close. Now, if you look to the south, towards my hometown of Danbury, it's nothing but rolling hills, and you can just see them getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you look to the west, which is New York State, way off in the distance, you can see the Catskill Mountains. And it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. You just see, if you were to hold a ruler, like a 12-inch ruler, up to your eyes, looking west, that's about how long the mountain range looks from this distance. But obviously, if you're in the Catskills, it's hundreds of miles of mountain ranges. But it's beautiful. You can see the jagged edges. It's really, on a clear day, you can see 90 miles in any direction. So it's a panoramic view, and it's gorgeous. And I mean, it's just, to me, it's a safe zone. I've always loved it up there. I've always thought, like, you know, that's my comfortable place. And so I never brought, in the 13 years that I've had midnight, I've never brought, excuse me, I've never brought midnight up there with me, ever. As a matter of fact, I haven't been up there since the 13 years I've had midnight. Now, mind you, again, I was up there a lot, dozens of times as a late teenager and in my early 20s. But ever since I got married and had kids and grandkids, no, I just, you know, haven't been there in a long time. So it's my very first time being back up there in over 22 years. And so I wanted to bring, you know, Midnight's 13, dogs live to be roughly 15 or so years. I know she don't have long. You know, she's starting to hurt. I know she's probably having arthritis or issues. You know, she's not as spry as she used to be. And I just wanted her to see this. And so I brought her up there, and it was a great day. It really was. Now, from the car to the summit of the mountain, it's about a 2-hour hike. From the base of the mountain to the actual summit of the mountain is literally about an hour and a half of that 2-hour hike. So from the car to the base of the mountain on the trail, which is the blue trail, that's about a half an hour. And then from where the blue trail meets the Appalachian Trail, because remember, again, this is all on the Appalachian Trail. This mountain, the Appalachian Trail runs directly over the summit of this mountain and then goes directly north for the rest of the Appalachian Trail. So from the base of the mountain to the summit of the mountain is about an hour and a half hike. And that's the easy path. If you were to go from the north side heading south, that's going to be like a 3-hour trek because it's way steeper, way steeper, and there's no way I could take midnight on those steep trails. So I took the easier climb, which is usually what we did when we were teenagers and in our early 20s. And so we get up there, and it's just, I mean, again, it was beautiful, and she's she's yipping at like squirrels and groundhogs and woodchucks. I mean, like, she was just having a time of her life. I loved it. But yeah, again, she's so mellow. I think it's because of her old age. She's just so mellow that, she's not going to go chase anything. Though I did have her on a leash the whole time. I always have my dog on a leash. I don't know why. I think maybe it's a comfort thing, but I always had her on my leash. And so we're up there and we're just enjoying everything. And then, I start realizing, the sun's heading towards the west. And, there again, in the west, you see the outline of the Catskill Mountains in New York. And, the sun is literally starting to touch the top of that range. And I'm like, okay, we've spent way too long here. We've got about an hour and a half to get back down. At that point, it was about 3:30 in the afternoon. So I would roughly say it was about 3:30 in the afternoon. So I knew it was going to be about an hour and a half to get back down. And so we start heading down. Again, there was nobody up there because it's winter, man. It's winter in New England. It was about 2 days ago. It was like 45 degrees, which if anybody who's listening who lives in Connecticut or lives in New England, 45 degrees in February is a nice day. That's a warm day in New England, in Connecticut. So it really was a nice day. And so we're heading down, and as anybody knows who's an avid outdoorsman or an avid hunter or an avid camper, when you're in a wilderness setting, so there's the type of wilderness where there's the plains, and then there's the forest, and this is forested. So it gets darker in the forest way sooner than if you were to hit a field. If you were to hit a field, you'd be like, oh wow, it's still daylight and it looks, like, okay, awesome. But when you're in the forest, it gets darker way faster. Although there's still like I guess you would say dusky light, but not dark, but dusky light. If you were in a field, it would still be daylight. And as we're heading down, that's kind of like what it was turning into. And as we're heading down and we're nearing the base of the mountain, the turn, which is the blue trail, so the Appalachian Trail is a white trail. All the way from Georgia to Maine, the Appalachian Trail is nothing but a white trail. That's how you know the Appalachian Trail. It's a white trail. And then, you have the blue trail or the red trail or the green trail. It has its own little colors for these other side trails. But the Appalachian Trail is always the white trail. And I knew the blue trail, which is facing south, heading back south, the blue trail would be on my right, and that takes me directly to where my car is. And again, my car is not in a parking lot. It's in this little side, I don't even know what you would call it. It's like a little, it's like a carve out. It's like an area of wood was carved out, and you can possibly fit 3 cars there max. And so, I'm going down, getting ready to hit the blue trail on my right. And I didn't notice it at the time, and I didn't mention it to you last night, Vic, because it took me a lot of contemplation and a lot of trying to remember exactly what happened. But it was kind of, I paid no attention to it. I paid absolutely zero attention to it, but I didn't hear any wilderness noises. And what I mean by that is, chirping birds, cawing crows, the sounds that squirrels make when they're in their trees and someone is walking by. They make these specific chirping noises. Some people might think they're birds, but no, that's a squirrel. That's a squirrel alerting its squirrel family, hey, there's a human, right? So, like, these are just noises that I'm used to and kind of take for granted. They're beautiful to listen to, but you hear them so often when you're in the woods that eventually it's like background noise, and you just eventually, I guess the best way to say it is, you take those noises for granted. If you spent 20 years in silence and then you heard these noises again, you would be in nirvana. You would be in ecstasy. But me, myself, personally, I think sometimes I take these natural sounds for granted. I kind of really didn't pay attention. It didn't register. But when I look back on it, I realized the forest was silent. Nothing. Not a dang thing. So I'm walking, and Midnight's with me, and she's just keeping the same pace I am. And somehow, I really, I'll get back to this at a later point, but somehow I show up at the green marker, which is on my left, which is where the lean-to is. So there's a lean-to at the base of the mountain, which is about maybe in less than an eighth of a mile from where the blue marker is. So the blue marker is on the right, heading south towards where my car is parked. And the green trail, the green marker, is on my left, less than an eighth of a mile from the blue marker. And that's where the lean-to is. That's where you can camp at the base of the mountain. And I'm like, what the heck? How did I miss the blue marker? And this is where everything changed. So it was at this point, I'm a little bewildered. I'm like, how did I miss, how many times have I been here in my youth? Am I just getting older now that I'm 50? Like, am I just not as aware as I used to be as a young man? But it was at this point where I noticed that Midnight was acting very strange. And she's walking in a circle. And she's whining. And this is behavior in 13 years of this beautiful big dog. She's a big dog. I mean, if anyone's ever seen a Scottish Mastiff, she's a big dog. Small children could ride her like a pony. And she's pacing in a circle, and she's whining like a soft whine. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, "What's wrong, girl?" And I go down, I'm petting her, and I'm patting her on the back, and I'm like, "What's wrong, girl? What's wrong, girl?" And then all of a sudden, she stops and she like stiffens her whole body and she points her head directly on the green path where the lean-to is. And she's just staring. She's not whining anymore. She's just staring. And I'm still patting her and I'm still petting her. I'm like, okay, that's odd. As I'm doing this, she pees. But she doesn't pee the way she normally does. Normally, when she has to pee, she lifts her leg and she'll pee like most dogs do. Nope. All 4 of her legs on the ground, and she's just standing there peeing, and she's staring straight ahead. And then she starts whining. And I'm like, what's going on, girl? What's going on? And then she growls. So I'm looking in the direction that she's looking, and I don't see anything. There's nothing. There's nothing there. And she lets out another growl, and then she whines. So it was a soft growl, and then there was a little bit more of a confident, like a defending growl, and then a whine. And I'm literally like, I've never seen my dog act like this in 13 years. And so I'm just paying attention to her. And I'm like, what is going on, girl? So now I get down on one knee and I'm like right there beside her. And, I'm trying to whisper comforting words like, what is going on? Everything's all right. But she didn't even look at me. Not this whole time. She did not even turn her head and look at me or lick me or nothing. She just beelining her head straight ahead. So again, I look where she's looking. And that's when I saw this enormous I don't even know how to describe the first thought of this head. I saw this enormous canine head. That's the word I'll use. I'll just use canine. I saw this massive canine head poke through the underbrush. And like I told Vic, it was roughly about 90 yards away. So anywhere between 270 to, at the max, 300 feet away. It was just on the other side of where the lean-to ended, right? Because nowhere on the Appalachian Trail are you going to see a lean-to on the trail. They always put the lean-tos a good distance off the trail. That way, depending on who's hiking and who's sleeping at the lean-to, and you're not being disturbed by trail people. So, the lean-to itself was probably about 80 yards off the Appalachian Trail, and this thing was in the brush about 90 yards off. Again, anywhere between 270 to 300 feet away. And it's just this massive canine head that pokes through the underbrush. At that moment, Midnight bolts towards the north while I'm holding her leash, and she's trying to get away. She just bolts. And literally, she's choking herself. 'Cause she's such a mellow dog. I don't give her those chest harness leashes. I give her your common old school neck leash because she's not an aggressive dog. There's no need to give her a chest harness. And she is literally so not only did she just pee prior to, while whining, and then the growl, and then the whine again, now she's trying to bolt with all of her massive strength. And she's a big dog. And she is, with all of her strength, she's tugging and tugging. I literally to the leash with two hands at this point, and she is choking herself. And I'm trying to say all these calming, soothing words, and I'm raising my voice at this point. But I never took my eyes off this thing. So I'm looking at this head as my dog is furiously trying to get away while choking herself. I would glance over real quick, and she's just, she's basically trying to leap. So her front paws are coming up, and she's trying to get away so hard, and this thing comes out further. And at this point, it fully emerges from the brush, and I realize I don't know what this thing is. It looks like a wolf. It looks like a coyote. It looks like a dog. It looks like all three. But it is massive. I mean, again, I'll bring it back to my love for extinct, or what we call extinct animals on Earth. The coelacanth, Gigantopithecus. The first thing that came to my head was dire wolf. Literally, that's the first thing that came to my head. Dire wolf. Okay, there's a dire wolf in front of me. No, that's not possible. No, that's absolutely not possible. And she, like, at this point, she's hurting herself so much trying to get away that I'm looking at her way more, and I'm tugging back on her now. So I'm starting to pull the leash in. So and I know it's hurting her, and I please guys don't be mad at me, but I'm pulling her in towards me now on the leash, so I can physically put my arms on her to keep her from choking herself, to keep her from running away. And I get her to me, and my left arm is now securely wrapped around her ribs, and I got her pressed tight against me. And this thing is still 90 yards away, and I could see the full thing. Vic, it had to have been the length. The only way I could describe it, it had to have been the length of a very large pony or a very large donkey. Not quite as long as a full-grown horse, and I'm not even talking height-wise. I just mean in length. About the size of a full-grown pony or a full-grown donkey. It was very long, longer than any wolf or coyote or dog that I've ever seen. And as a solo camper, I've been to wildlife refuges where I've seen timber wolves, gray wolves, red wolves. I know what wolves look like up close and personal due to the magnificence of wildlife sanctuaries. I've seen coyote in the wilderness on my own as a solo camper. This was none of that. This was none of these things. And so I got her right up against my ribs. So my left arm is like literally like just, I got her squeezed. I got her squeezed tight against me, and she's struggling. Of course, she's bucking and struggling. Like I've never ever seen my dog act like this, and I can see why, because I was freaked out too. I'm like, what is this thing? It's not a wolf. It's not a coyote. It's not a dog, but it's the length. It's the length of a pony. Now, let me just say for measure, people, I'm 6'5". I weigh 200 pounds. So I'm tall and thin. All right, 6'5", 200 pounds. This thing, at the tip of its very long pointed ears, had to have been around 4.5 feet on all fours, roughly about 4.5 feet. And we're on level ground here. So the way the green trail ran to the lean-to from the Appalachian Trail, because I was right on the cusp of the white trail and the green trail, and it's all flat because you're at the base of the mountain at this point, so it's all flat ground and everything is, you're on even ground. So this thing is literally on the same even ground as I am. It's not down in a depression. It's not up on a hill rise. We're on level ground. And it had to have been 4.5 feet, maybe even a little over, just where it was on its fours. And this this is where everything changed my entire life. So two things happened at the same exact time, simultaneously, at the same exact time, but I could only describe them individually. So I'm going to start with the audible sound. As it's standing there, like a dog, like a wolf, like a coyote, but 3 times the size. Again, maybe even 4 times the size. It was like a pony or a donkey in length. I hear these snapping and popping sounds. Like, the only way I can describe it is if bones are being broken or extremely large joints are being popped out and then popped back in. And it was loud. I mean, it was so audible. Just snap, pop, snap, crack, pop, snap, pop, crack, snap, pop, crack. Like a lot. Like a lot's going on. Like it was a lot of snapping and popping. And as these sounds are happening, it stood up on 2 legs. And as it stood up, I could see the muscle definition rippling in its legs, in its torso, in its arms. I could literally see this massive muscle under its fur. I could literally see the muscles rippling and moving as it stood up.
Hey, Mike, do you need to take a break?
So these sounds. No. I'm good, Vic. I'm good, Vic. Thank you for asking. But as these snapping, popping sounds are going off, is when I saw it. It all happened at the same time, but I can't describe the sound and the musculature all at the same time. So I just wanted to just take a moment to do the one and then the other right after it. But this all literally happened simultaneously at the same time. And it stands up, and that I lost my grip. I lost my grip on midnight, and she screamed, and I like when obviously it wasn't a scream. It was the most fearful yip or yowl I've ever heard Midnight give in 13 years of having her by my side on a daily basis. And she bolted. She took off north, back towards the mountain. And I'm just frozen in fear. I'm literally frozen in fear. I almost felt as if a wave of supernatural fear just washed over me. It wasn't fight or flight. It was not that. Fight or flight is when you encounter a less than intelligent natural animal like a bear or a cougar or a bobcat or a coyote or a wolf. That's fight or flight, or even another human being. You know, as a matter of fact, I think most of our fight or flight instincts are with human beings. This was not that. This was not that at all. This was a wave of sheer terror. Sheer terror. Like, unlike anything I ever experienced in my life. And in that moment, I wet myself. I'm man enough to admit it. Whatever. I'm 50 years old. Go ahead, make fun of me. I wet myself. And I could not move. Every part of me was just run. But I couldn't move. It's literally almost as if this thing had me in its grasp from so far away. And it hadn't even, once it stood up, it didn't even move. It's still there, 90 yards away, roughly 270, maybe at the most 300 feet away. It did not move from the point when it finally cleared the brush. And I'm just sitting there frozen. Not in fear, in sheer terror, beyond any fight or flight instinct. And I look back on it being 2 days ago and after I talked to you yesterday, and I kept remembering, death. You're going to die. Death. You're dead. You're done. That's it. Hell, I hope Midnight, runs 8-9 miles to the nearest town and finds someone to take care of her. Because this is it. And I look back on it. I heard the story of that yesterday. Yesterday was the first time I heard any of your episodes ever in my life. And I heard the one about the army guy with Top, who was like the meal. He was the meal guy who would bring meals out to the regiments out in the field doing practice drills and whatnot. And he mentioned that he ran into a female thing that was telepathically communicating to him. And when I heard that, the first thing that came to my head was, this thing is saying death in my head. It wasn't saying I'm going to kill you. It wasn't saying you're going to die. But I just remember in that moment, death. And that could totally be me. I'm not saying this thing was telepathically talking to me. That's not what I'm saying at all, Vic. I'm not even going there. I'm just saying, after hearing that one gentleman's story and then just remembering what I kept repeating in my head, I'm like, okay, that's something I should maybe think about that. So I'm literally frozen in sheer terror, and I could see this thing as plain as day. It's literally 90 yards from me on level ground. So its head was massive, and the only way I could describe its head is again, that's what I just say, canine. It had a long muzzle like a wolf or a coyote or a German shepherd. Its ears were more like a German shepherd, comparable to a wolf or a coyote, in the sense that it stood, its tall sides, whereas a timber wolf or a gray wolf will have them a little bit more centered, like towards like the forehead area. These were more along the lines of on the side. And what I did notice in the fading light, because about this time, it's about 5, maybe even 5:30ish. So it's getting dark. And in the fading light, I could see it had tufts at the tips of its ears, like a lynx. If anybody who's ever been in New England or in southeastern Canada, lynx are prominent. And if you've ever seen one, which is very rare, but I'm sure we've all seen them on TV. We've all seen them on the Nature Channel and this, that, and the other. So we know what lynx look like, and it had that type of tuft at the tips of its ears. And its head was massive. I would say its shoulders, from shoulder to shoulder, from shoulder to shoulder, was about 3 feet, 3 feet wide. Again, I'm 6'5", 200 pounds, and I'm half that. I'd say 3 feet from shoulder to shoulder. I estimate between 8 and 9 feet tall. Me being 6'5", and we're on level ground. Again, it wasn't higher up on a hillock. It wasn't lower down in a depression. We're on level ground. So if I'm 6'5", this thing had to have been, again, estimation, between 8 and 9 feet tall. And then besides this horrifying visage of its head and its muzzle, its arms were disgustingly long, impossibly long, grotesquely long. That's the word, grotesquely long. And it wasn't so much the shoulder to the elbow part. It was the elbow to the wrist part. It was the forearm was grotesquely long. And these hands, and yes, they were not paws, they were hands. They looked let me just finish with the forearms. Okay, I'm getting like I'm starting to have a little bit of a moment here, but these
You're
forearms.
doing fine, Mike. Take your time. We're with you.
Thank you, Vic. So again, I'm 6'5", 200 pounds, tall and thin. I wear a size 12 boot. if I were to put the sole of my boot to my forearm, it would fit roughly like a bug in a rug. You know, it's about that length. And I think if any of us were to put the sole of their feet up to their forearm, their foot would probably match the length of their forearm. And this thing's forearms had to have been twice the length of mine from what I would call its elbow. I don't even know if that was an elbow. But from what I would consider its elbow to its hand was grotesquely long. I mean, absurdly, grotesquely long. And then that's when I noticed, I guess what I would call hands. To me, the only way I could describe this is if you've ever seen a squirrel eat a nut or a raccoon eat a nut, the way their hands are so agile and dexterous where they can manipulate that nut like super fast. If you've ever seen a squirrel, anybody who's been camping or a hunter who's listening knows what I'm talking about. If you've ever seen a squirrel or a raccoon go to town on a nut and they're just sitting there shifting this thing rapidly, chewing on it, breaking the outer shell to get to the food on the inside, and just manipulating their hands. You know, I hate to say it, but squirrels have hands and raccoons have relatively primate-ish hands in that sense, that they can manipulate things very, very well indeed. And that's what it looked like. They looked like giant squirrel hands or giant raccoon hands, but they were the size of like a catcher's mitt in professional baseball, if not even bigger, like width-wise. Just the width of these hands were roughly the size of a professional baseball player's catcher's mitt. Literally. Grotesquely abnormal. But then that would relate back to its head. Its head was grotesquely, abnormally large. This whole thing was just abnormally grotesque in every aspect of it. And I remember its fur coloring or hair, whatever you call that. It kind of resembled the coloring of a coyote. It was a dark gray, dark brown, kind of mottled gray brown coloring, but yet in the fading light, it looked as if the tips of its short hair, and it was short hair for sure. This thing was not like a shaggy dog. It was not like long hair shaggy dog at all. It was short hair like a coyote. It's almost as if the tips of its fur or hair was tipped in black, like black highlights. So it was a like grayish brown colored fur / hair, but it had these like black highlights at the tips. And this thing had hocks. I don't know how many people listening know what a hawk is, but it's a dog leg. It's a backward bending dog leg. This thing had hocks. I I, I think to me that was the most absurd. That was the most absurd, obscene thing about this whole encounter. I mean, everything about it was insane. It was a nightmare. But noticing these hawks, man, Midnight had hawks. This thing had the same legs as my dog.
It's okay, Mike. Take your time.
And that was my full frontal view of this thing. It didn't snarl. It didn't growl. It didn't show any teeth. And I'm glad for that. I mean, this thing's head is so massive. If it opened its mouth, it could literally probably swallow my head entirely. There's no, I will literally bet my life on that. This thing could swallow my head entirely. That's how massive this thing's head was. It was at that point that off in the distance to the north, I hear Midnight yelp in pain. Or maybe it was distress. I don't know which, but to me, it sounded like she was in pain. And that was the only thing that snapped me out of this weird immobilizing moment of sheer terror. I mean, it's almost like this thing it's almost like when it stood up and I heard those snapping, crackling, popping sounds and it stood up and I looked it in its eyes. Oh, and by the way, Vic, I must add that it had yellow eyes. Like yellow right out of a crayon box. Yellow, straight yellow. Just plain, average, normal, mustard yellow. I mean, this thing had straight up, right out of a crayon box, yellow eyes. And so when I hear Midnight way off in the distance, heading towards the north, back towards the mountain, that kind of broke me. I don't know what or why, but that broke me from this weird, and I mean weird, immobilizing trance. Like if you know anything about Greek mythology, if you look into the eyes of Medusa, you get turned to stone, and that's kind of how I felt at that moment. And again, it was that wave of paralyzing fear that I felt wash over me when I made eye contact. And when I heard my dog in pain, it snapped me out of it. And I immediately started running the way my dog did back north towards the mountain. And I don't know how I missed the trail on my way south going back to my car to begin with. No idea. Again, I used to go there a lot in my late teens and early 20s. And it's the Blue Trail. Everybody knows it's the Blue Trail. How could I possibly have missed it my first time coming back, going to the car? I don't get it. And I look back on it and I'm like, okay, the weird, like, no wilderness noises, no chipmunks are chirping because they're upset that I'm in the way of their foraging or something. Like, I didn't think of it then, but after talking to you yesterday, I have thought about that all day today. Like, why were there no noises? Usually that's a sign of a large predator. But the only predators we have in northwestern Connecticut are black bear, coyote, bobcat, and we have moose, but moose aren't predators, so, I mean, they're large and they'll stomp you to death, but they're not predators. So really the only predators we have in northwestern Connecticut are black bear, coyote, bobcat. There's been an occasional mountain lion sighting, but that's far and few between. Even then, did someone really see that? Regardless, I bolt. I start bolting the way my dog did, towards the north, towards the mountain, which is where the blue path was, that somehow, unbeknownst to me, I completely walked past and did not see. Which, even as I speak right now, still blows my mind. How did I miss the blue path? So heading south towards my car, initially, the blue path would have been on my right. And the right trail is facing west. Now that I'm running back the way my dog ran towards the mountain, towards the blue path, now the trail is going to be on my left. And for some reason, even in the failing light, and I'm talking, it's about 5 o'clock, maybe even 5:10, 5:15 at this time. I don't know. All I know is it's got to be around 5 o'clock. And when you're in the wilderness, when you're in a heavily forested area, it's getting dark real fast. If you're in a field, it's still daylight and everything is wonderful and sunny and beautiful. But here, it's getting dark and it's getting dark fast. And I don't know how I missed it on my way down, but I don't know if it was the fear or the terror, but I clearly could see the blue insignias on the trees saying north, blue path left, parking area. And I'm bolting. And at first I hear nothing. I'm bolt. All I can hear is my own heartbeat in my ears. And then out of nowhere, I hear what sounds like a wrecking ball, a literal wrecking ball smashing through the dense forest on my left. So now I'm facing west towards where my car is. And on my left, which would be facing south, I just hear this smashing and cracking of underbrush and trees, like literal. I'm telling you, I heard trees going down, and you could hear the branches of the falling tree smashing into other branches of standing trees. And it is just this cacophony, a literal cacophony of smashing limbs and branches, literally as if you took a wrecking ball and just swung that thing right through the densest, most dense forest you could possibly think of. This is what I heard. And as I hear it, I notice for the very first time these very loud thumps. like pounding thumps on the earth. Every time my right foot or every time my left foot hit the ground as I'm running faster than I've ever ran in my damn life, I could literally feel the ground shake. Every time my foot touched the earth as I ran, I could feel the ground shake in cadence to the sound of this. And let me please make this very clear. I know the sound of a bear running. Been there, done that. I know the sound of a deer running. I know the sound of a coyote running. Again, I've been a solo camper my whole life. I know what it sounds when an animal on four legs is running or trotting through the forest. I know what that sounds like. It's very, very distinctive. You know, one after the other. This was an unmistakably bipedal cadence. Thump, 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 thump. And it was that fast. As fast as I was running, this thing was thump, 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 thump. And every time either of my boots touched the earth, I could literally feel the ground reverberating. The ground was literally shaking from the impact of whatever it was running behind me. And from the lean-to to my car is roughly about a quarter mile from the lean-to to my car. It would have been shorter if I hit the blue trail from the beginning, but I was probably an eighth of a mile south of that. So in total, from the lean-to to my car was probably a half a mile. And I'm running for dear life, and it's getting very dark. I don't have a flashlight. I'm stumbling. I'm tripping. I fell a few times. I bashed my knees. I bashed my elbows. I was scraped up. I actually ended up with a black eye because I fell. I tripped over something. I don't know what it was. I couldn't see. I tripped over something, and I smacked my face right on a rock that was right in the middle of the path. Because these are not, if you've ever been on the Appalachian Trail, it's not like it's not like a walking path you can skateboard down. These are very rough, very rugged trails. And I smacked my face right off of this rock. I ended up having, I still have a black eye right now. And my eye ended up being swollen shut later that night. But I continued running, and I'm all bashed up, and I'm all scraped up, and I could just, the sound of these thumps it almost sounded like something was ripping trees right out of the ground. I mean, it was such a terrifying sound to hear, and then feeling the ground shake with every thump. I peed myself again. Okay? So 2 times. I wet myself a second time after I smashed my face on that rock, and I continued running. I knew I was done. That's it. I'm done. I hope Midnight gets out of this alive, you know? And, yeah, I'm done. It's like I go back to when I was standing in front of it, and I just kept thinking, death, 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 death. Why am I not dead already? I mean, this thing is so large. and so fast. The way it was crashing through the woods, it's I could only imagine, like, it stopped to let me run ahead a little bit further and then took the pursuit again or something. Because, I mean, I'm 6'5", and I've got a long stride. When I'm running, I've got a long stride. As anybody who's ever known a 6'5" person, you've got a long stride when you're running. And if this thing is 8 to 9 feet tall, it's got to at least double, if not triple, my stride. And it was only 90 yards away, at the most 300 feet away, tops, from when I first bolted after I heard Midnight yelp in pain. So I have no idea why I wasn't ripped to shreds at this point, because I knew I was going to be. I just knew it. There's no getting out of this. So after I smash my face, I just keep stumbling and I'm running. And now I'm screaming. I'm not even screaming. I'm not even screaming anything coherent. I'm literally just screaming. And finally, I get to a part where I realize the parking lot is right up the trail. And I'm like, okay, it's gonna get me. It's just this dang thing is just gonna wait, like a horror movie where you think you're safe, and then that's it. That's when it takes this enormous, grotesquely large head and just bites your head off in one swift bite. I mean, the size of this thing's head, I could only imagine if it opened up its maw, I could only imagine what this thing could possibly do. As a matter of fact, I kind of really don't. I wish I didn't even say that. I wish I did not even say that. So I see my car at the end of the trail where it opens up into where it's cleared and then the road is behind it. And I was so happy because I saw Midnight standing on the hood of my car, on the hood of my engine. And she's yipping and yapping. I don't know if it was in joy or if it was in fear, because she doesn't normally do these things. She does not. She's such a mellow dog. Even when other dogs bark at her, she doesn't bark back. She just looks at them like, I'm better than you. You know, like, I don't like the way you talk to me. I'm not going to grace that with an answer. I'm not going to grace that with a follow-up bark. And she's yipping and yapping. And I'm just running as fast as I can, which actually, at this point, I think I'm running much slower than I was initially, because I'm beat up, I'm scraped up, my head hurts, my face hurts. So I'm sure I wasn't even running as fast as I could, and I'm at complete running on adrenaline alone. I'm 50 years old. I don't have that type of energy anymore. And so I run to the car, and when I approach, she hops off the hood. She's right next to me. I open up the door. I unlock the door, I should say. I had both my driver's side and passenger side windows down because, again, in New England for winter, it was a warm day. It was like 45, maybe 46 degrees out. And that is considerably warm in February in New England. And I hop in the car. She jumps in first, and she runs over to the passenger seat. I hop in, And as soon as I take my keys and I'm about to put them in to the ignition, three things happened at one time. Again, simultaneously, but with like a second delay on each one. So the first thing that happened was out of my driver's side window, which was down. Now, mind you, my car is the way my car was parked, it's facing east. So the mountain would be on my left, facing north. Out of my driver's side window, I hear the most disgusting, haunting, low baritone bass howl I've ever heard in my life. I've heard coyotes howl. They don't really howl all that much. They more yip. They yip and they yap and they bark. And they do it in like a song, a sing song. That's how coyotes howl. Is they sing song these yips and yaps and barks. Once in a while you'll hear an actual howl out of the pack. This was not anything like that. This was a grotesque, mournful, haunting, baritone bass howl. And about 1 second later, out of my passenger window, the same exact howl, no pitch different at all, comes from that direction. Midnight jumps off my passenger seat and crawls down to the floorboard as close as she can to the engine, and she pees. She's peeing on my floorboard, and I could hear her urine forcefully exiting her onto my floorboard as these two, and 1 second after the second one. So this all happens within 3 seconds. No joke. Simultaneously, a third one erupts exactly ahead of me to the east in the direction I just came from, where this damn thing was chasing me. Came the third one. And I'm not going to do this any justice at all, but it came like this. It was like, oh, that fast. Like one after the other, a second apart. One to my left, one to my right, and then the one ahead of me. The one ahead of me was the loudest. And this is as I'm putting the keys into my ignition. This all happens within 3 seconds. So I turn the car on. I didn't even look behind me for hikers. I didn't look behind me for cars or anything. I didn't care. I put it into reverse. I smashed on the gas and I backed up facing south. I put it into drive and I just floored it. And if any of you guys listening know anything about any adjacent roads that lead to any Appalachian Trail, they are rough. They're single lane, dirt, gravel roads that are literally ridden with massive potholes. I mean, potholes that just, like, how did that happen? Did someone come out and take a shovel and dig a hole in the road? Why is the pothole so big? Like, just, it's that kind of country road. And again, I'm out in the wilderness and I am just flooring it. And I'm going over all these things. I checked. I checked this morning because I didn't do it when I got back, and I didn't do it yesterday before or after I talked to Vic. But today I finally looked at my car, and I cracked both my struts, and I really messed up the wheel walls of all four of my tires. I just I must have been doing 40 down this single car narrow dirt gravel road with these massive potholes for like miles, and my car's pretty much messed up. I have to take it to a mechanic and spend quite a bit of money to get it fixed, but I already set that up, and I think that's going to happen in 2 days. I think it's going to happen on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. Unfortunately for the mechanic, hopefully he's not a football fan, or maybe that's why he's charging me so much money. I don't know. But that is how I got out of there. And it's about an hour south to get back to Kent, Connecticut, which is in the central western part of Connecticut, where the hills are only about 1,000 feet tall and not over 2,000 feet tall. And I ran in, hysterical. Midnight went running in before me, and I ran in after her. And I'm frantic. I'm hysterical, and my jeans are saturated in my own urine. I peed myself twice. Luckily, I didn't have a big breakfast, or else other things might have happened. But my, my mom and my dad and my sister. My sister's 5 years older than me, so she's 55. Again, my mom's 75. My dad's 80. I had 2 aunts and 2 uncles and some cousins over, but they were in the other, like they like to do their own thing over in that side of the house where like the pool table is and all that. And I explained my story to them, and my sister laughed at me. My dad, they know me as a person with integrity. I've been a professional chef for 32 years, and I've been a professional my whole life. And they know me as someone with integrity. They know that I'm someone who does not lie. If you ask me a question, even if it's going to hurt your feelings, I will tell you the truth, even though it's going to hurt your dang feelings. I would rather tell you the truth and hurt your feelings than lie to you and have you find the lie and then lose trust in me. That's the type of person I am. And my family knows it. And I think my sister was just being, well, a jerk, who she is, and she was making fun of me. My dad, he did not disbelieve me, but he was like, "Oh, I'm sure you probably saw a disfigured bear. You saw a disformed bear." That's the way my dad looked at it. But my mother, being the nurturer of the entire family, she was looking me right in my eyes. I mean, she was staring right into my soul when I was explaining this to her. And then she's looking at me shaking, visibly shaking, as if I was like, Parkinson's disease times 10. And then she noticed that how wet my pants were with urine. It's clear because it all stemmed from the crotch region and just flooded both my legs. And it's very clear to anybody that this man peed himself. And that's when my mom that's when she really took everything I was saying very serious. And and she brought after a few minutes, she brought me off to the side and brought me a clean pair of clothes, and uh, I took a quick shower. I mean, like quick, like a 3 minute shower. Like I didn't even use soap. I just wanted to wash the urine off of me because I had to finish telling my story. So I just literally took like a 2 minute rinse shower, and I put on uh, some pajama bottoms, and I sat down in the guest bedroom and I finished telling her my story. And that's the story that I ended up telling to the park ranger the very next day. And then that's when the park ranger gave me the information to contact dogmanencounters.com. And that's when I met Vic. And that is the brunt of my story.
Wow, Mike, I've told you this several times, and I'll tell you again, I'm so sorry to hear that you had to go through that experience. How horrific. But there's good news in that. I mean, at least you're okay. Like I explained last night to you, if that dogman wanted to get you, he had so many opportunities to do that. And he wasn't alone, as he found out as well. But yeah, it's all in how you look at it. I know it's not easy to deal with, even after a conversation. It's going to take time just processing it and remembering the things that I shared with you yesterday in our conversation. But you are going to be just fine. It's just going to take time to come to terms with this. And I also want to make sure you don't lose sight of the fact that, like I told you yesterday and I told you today earlier on, you're never going to be alone in this. You're always going to have help. If you ever need to talk with me about this again, you know how to reach out to me and let me know. And by all means, we'll schedule other phone conversations so I can find out what's ailing you. But you've got help. You really do. You've got more support than you're ever going to know. But after going through reliving this experience, it's been so hard on you. It just would be horrible to do a Q&A now. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring tonight's show to an end, but would you feel up to coming back next week? And understand there's no pressure to do this, but would you feel up to coming back next Friday night on a live stream and answering questions that the listeners have for you?
Yeah, I could do that tonight. I could do it whenever you need me to. I'm not opposed to even doing it right now if you want to, but if you think it would be best to do it next week, that's fine with me as well. I want you to know that I kind of feel like it's therapeutic at this moment, being that I'm in the moment, that if you want to do it now, I'm okay with that. But if you feel it's better to do it on a later date, I could do that as well, and I won't shy away from it.
Well, you're probably looking at over an hour worth of questions, and looking at the fact that it's already so late. As long as you're up for coming back next Friday night at 9 p.m. to do a live stream so we could have the listeners ask questions and whatnot, then let's do that. Let's close out tonight and then just come back next Friday and do it then.
Sure. If you think that the listeners will give us an hour or more of questions and me answering, yeah, I am absolutely okay with that, Vic. As long as you're okay with that, I'm absolutely fine with that. As a matter of fact, I will even make sure I talk to my boss, because by then I'll be back in Virginia. I leave Saturday night to go back to Virginia, to the Shenandoah Mountains, and I will make sure that I contact my boss and let them know that I need Friday night off. So maybe he can schedule me for a morning shift as a chef. I could do the morning shift and have the night free. But I can guarantee you, there's no way after everything I've experienced, and then relaying it to you, and then also relaying it to the audience live, that I cannot end it there. I have to be able to finish any questions that you might have yourself. I'm sure you yourself have questions, let alone anybody listening. So absolutely, I will make sure that I am free next Friday night.
I'm glad that'll work for you. And you're right. Yeah, of course, I'm going to have questions for you as well. More than likely, we're looking at probably a 90-minute show because of all the questions. But yeah, I'm just glad,
That's
like I
fine.
said, to hear that you can come back next Friday and do that. So yeah, let's just do it then. You know what they say about too much weight on a young back? You're not a young guy, but you had that encounter 2 days ago. So yeah, I mean, this is so fresh. That is the definition of a young back when it comes to coming to terms with this. But having said that, Mike, again, like I said, I am so sorry you had to experience that. But if you could have only seen all the support coming your way from the live chat, and please keep an eye on the comments to the video, to the video that posts as well. I don't think you're going to believe all the support you're going to get there also. But having said that,
I'm not even familiar with Dogman Encounters Radio. If I were to look at any of the do I go on YouTube?
Well, we're going to talk after we close the show out here. We're going to talk, and I'll put you on the target so that you know how to check out the comments and everything then.
Okay.
Yeah, but like I told you,
okay.
Thanks for coming on and sharing this experience. I'm so sorry to hear what that dog man did to you, but yeah, everything is going to be just fine. It's going to be okay. But having said that,
Thanks, Vic.
try to go. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Glad to help. Try to go someplace and unwind as much as possible. I know easier said than done, but try to relax as much as possible. Try to unwind, because you definitely deserve it.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You are welcome. Like I said, Mike, please stay with me. Please don't go anywhere, because we're going to talk after I close out the show. All right?
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, everyone, like I told you before, thank you so much for all the support you show the eyewitnesses. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I really do. And of course, please keep Mike in your minds. And like I said, we'll be back next Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time to do another live stream where Mike's going to be ready to answer your questions that you have for him. So thanks again for listening, and have a great night.